Hello and welcome to my first tutorial on how to make VRChat models. This is going to be an updated version. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So when you create a new Blender file, and just keep in mind that this is Blender version 4.3.2 that I'm using. Excuse me. But basically, this is the start off. You got a basic cube, a camera, and a light. What you want to do is click A to select it all, click X on your keyboard to delete, and then you press number 1 to get to the front view. So now this is really important. First, after all of that's been deleted, because you're not going to need them, you need to have a reference. So, and luckily I've got one here in my pictures. So while you're in object mode, you just drag and drop the picture or the reference in and scale it to your liking. This is a commission that one of my friends wants me to do. So as long as I have a reference, it'll be easier to work with. So let me show you guys how I make models. This right here is the cursor. It's where, basically it's where everything crops up. Like for example, you need a new mesh. So what I do is I go Shift A, Mesh, and typically what I like to do is work on the muzzle first, and I use a UV sphere for that. And you see here, add UV sphere, a box pops up, and there's segments, rings, radius. I'm not too worried about the rings and radius segments, but the segments, like the actual segments, what that basically means is there are a multiple amounts of faces. See, if you look on the sphere right there, you see what looks like a bunch of squares. And typically when I make my models, I take the segments down to, let's say, 20. And those squares shortened up. So go ahead and close that, click out of it. And typically I go on the side view, hit R, rotate 90 degrees. Because the way I make my models is this part right here is where the mouth would be. So here's how this works. By tabbing edit, or hit the tab on your keyboard, and you go into edit mode, and you'll see that there's vertex, edge, and face. These are basically options that you can select. So what I normally do is I'll select the face, and then another thing, select, you hold down here and then scroll down to select lasso. I prefer to use the lasso because I have more hand movement. I have the freedom to select faces based off of their shapes. So after I select those, you just hold and drag on your mouse until the faces are selected. Then I hit X, delete faces. So, and as you can see, there's a big hole. Don't worry, don't panic. That's normal. So with edge select, I hold Alt and I select with my left mouse button that circle we just made. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna help us shape the mouth. So Up here there are options. This is proportional editing. And basically what that does is it will make any lines or faces or vertices, whatever you have selected, and it makes them follow. See, if you take a look, I hit G and just move it around with my mouse. You see there's a bunch of movement. It's not just that one line I selected, it's a multitude of them. So to get out of movement mode without ruining the mesh, you just click on the right mouse button and it takes you out of it. Keep that in mind because that's going to be very useful in case you make mistakes. So, and you see how there's that white dot in the middle? Basically what that means is that the mesh moves entirely. You're not just going to be able to move one segment. So to disable that, you just click connect only. That's typically what I use when I make models. But basically, you hit S, and using the scroll wheel on your mouse, you can actually change the size of the proportional radius. So that way you get to have the option of choosing which lines it's gonna affect. So I hit S, Z, and it shrinks in only one direction, as you can see here. And there we go. Now, it looks a little bit janky, but bear with me. So Alt, select, and here's a neat little trick. When you hit the letter G on your keyboard twice, you can actually move the line itself and it follows along the edges or vertices. Don't try to do this with faces selected. It doesn't really work all that well. But yeah, basically you're just shaping until you feel that you've got a good muzzle, or at least the bases of the muzzle. And what you also want to do is, you see the edge there? Alt select. It's very important that with edge select active, you right click and select mark seam. And what that's going to do, it's basically going to make separate segments. So that way, when you're making the inner mouth, I'll just show you that. I'm going to show this. See, up here is X-ray mode. And everyone should know what X-ray means. It just basically means that you can look through the mesh so you can see what you're doing. So here's how this works. With those edges still selected, you can see right through it. But looking along the x-axis, you hit E and Y to go along the YZ, and you just pull it out and it creates that. Now I know it looks flat, but bear with me. Here we go. Here's how this is gonna work. So when you extrude, those lines stay highlighted. So all you really have to do is shape it. So with Control R, you can actually add lines. You can add edges. And it really comes in handy when you're making models. Using the scroll wheel, you can add as many as you can. I wouldn't recommend too many lines though, because there's a part in the tutorial that I will show later. So basically, I go with 3 and click the left button, then the right button to keep the lines centered. And you can even go in there, turn off the X-ray, and Alt select And this is what's gonna happen. I selected the middle line, right? So S, Z, and it just opens up the middle. But yeah, basically all you have to do is just shape it until you feel that you got a good muzzle base. So, and then SX. This shrinks it from the x-axis. There we go. And then Control F, grid fill. And down here is a grid fill area. Basically what that means is that it fills up a certain area based off of the vertices and lines. So there's span, which means it can go all the way across the edges, and there's offset. So if you want to straighten out the vertices or edges, just use that. If you need to add, there we go. I personally prefer to have something with a center line, and the reason for that is to keep it as clean as possible, because when you have wonky vertices, it makes the models look kind of weird, especially later on. So bear that in mind. But yeah, it's good. Oh, here's something I wanted to show you guys. Go back into X-ray mode and click Control Z to undo that. But check this out, guys. I wanted to show you an alternate way to scale. So Alt S, and there we go. You can even use the scroll wheel to have it affect other lines, but you want to be careful so it doesn't go over these lines. It's a good idea to have the inner mouth big, because when I get ready to do something that's called subdivision modifier, it's gonna shrink the mesh, but it's also gonna smooth it out. So there's that. There we go. And see, looking pretty clean there, if I say so myself. So yeah, just basically shape it to however you want. Just keep in mind to not mess with this line, and you'll see why later. And if need be, use Control R to add another line of edges, because again, you'll see why later. So get as close as possible to that. Okay. Now, it's important to actually rename these. So like, for example, this is muzzle. I know it doesn't look like a muzzle now, but you'll see before too long. So we need another mesh, actually. I'm gonna go Shift A, mesh, and we're gonna add another sphere. And then for this one, we're actually Tab A, S to make it slightly bigger. Just slightly. And we're gonna call this one cage. Now, this part's pretty cool, actually. Let me show you viewport display. And if you can, it's under object properties, viewport, textured, and we change it to wire. So that way you can actually see the muzzle inside. And there's a reason for that. So I'm going to show you guys a neat little trick. Select the muzzle, go into modifiers, and it's easy enough to search, but here you'll need mesh deform. And you see it's red right now. It means it's not tied to any object in the scene. So in order to fix that, You just use this eyedropper data block and select the cage and just leave it at 5, click dynamic and bind. It's gonna take a little bit. All right, so now watch this. See, I click on the cage, go into edit mode, and I select, let's say, the vertex group, why not? And it's fine if you want to just keep it all highlighted because this is going to be shrunken. But basically, S, X, and look. Isn't that cool? So yeah, the whole point of the cage, I will show you later, is so that way, if I needed to, I could adjust it to where the mouth can be on, either be left in the middle, or I can actually move it to the sides. Here, let me show you really quick. So, object, muzzle, and don't worry, don't freak out if you see that. You just simply go over here and click these two, so that way you can still see the mesh deform if you go into edit mode. But while that modifier is active, you cannot change anything on the muzzle, because what that will do, I'll show you, is that it doesn't really, let's just say that it doesn't really work very well. But go back into object mode and double tap R and look at, you can actually move the mouth around. So let's say you're making a Sonic model, and Sonic's mouth is usually on the sides, right? Well, yeah, this is the way to do it. So before continuing further on with shaping it, I'd recommend using R with the muzzle to change the mouth's direction, but it's up to you. But typically Sonic models, like the actual Sonic models, their mouths are on the side, but since this one has a center mouth, we don't have to worry about that here. But I just wanted to give a little bit of a tidbit. So Control Z to undo all that, and the mouth is centered again. But yeah, so clicking on the cage, go into edit mode, and then just start playing around with it is basically what you need to do. Just keep in mind, enable mesh symmetry in the X axis. What that's going to do, as long as the meshes are even, like nothing's been modified, nothing's been changed, everything stayed in the very center of the scene, G, and you can actually, there we go, see? One side copies the other side's movements. Pretty neat, huh? So for this, I'm going to select all, so A, S, Y, and I'm just gonna get that smaller, and then from the side, here we go. I know this looks a little weird right now, but trust me, it'll be worth it in the end. I love using the mesh deform modifier. It's honestly, it's one of my favorite things. I actually learned how to do this because back then I was really into making animations. I still do those from time to time. It's just been a while because I've been so busy with making VR chat models. So, you know, but someday I'll get back into it. I just have to deal with stuff IRL first. So we're gonna go here. But yeah, you just keep shaping it, and depending on the axes, you hit X, Y, or Z. And in this case, it's Z. Let me get into X-ray so I can actually see. There's that vertex. Yeah, a friend of mine had actually asked me to make this tutorial for him, so I figured I might as well show everybody on how I do it. I know it looks weird now, but trust me when I say that once I feel like I got this fully shaped, it's gonna look really good when I show you the subdivision modifier. But yeah, you're just making the general shape of the mouth. Or muzzle. Oh my god, English is hard. And just gonna shape that there. Pull this on the Y. And again, just use the scroll wheel to affect the other vertices. So here we go. It's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. So another thing you can also do is select, just tap A on your keyboard to select everything. Vertex, smooth vertices. If it was looking too clunky to you. I normally don't, but at least not in the early stages. But it is a really nice feature to have. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. Let me go on the X here. And G, Y. Okay. Let's hide the cage for a minute so we can take a full look. Okay. Let me see. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. I'm just gonna adjust one more thing here. There. Okay. So go into the muzzle and just click apply. So that way the shape stays the way it is, and then we can select that, X, delete. Now check this out. I was talking about the subdivision modifier earlier, and this is what it looks like. See? It smooths it out. Look at that, looking pretty clean. And you'll notice that it still looks blocky. That's because it just needs to be smoothed out. So the easiest way to do that, right click, shade smooth. Check it. Looking clean. And what's cool about the subdivision modifier is that, make sure you have all of this selected. Tab into edit mode. And as long as you have the X axis on, G, Y, take that scroll down, is that it actually shapes it in real time before you apply the modifier. It's one of the many features that I love about Blender. And as you can see, that line I added, it actually acts as a, let's see, scroll that down. It helps with protruding the lips, especially when the subdivider is on. So yeah, but basically you can just shape the mouth. Trying to get into the inner. There we go. clipping, you see? Now this part may take a bit of time to get used to, but I absolutely love using the subdivision modifier, especially since it actually gives a cleaner look, pretty much. But yeah. And see, another reason why I wanted to mark the seams sooner rather than later is because of the fact that you tend to get lost when you're looking at a bunch of black lines or dots, and it just makes it easier to find the parts that are marked. But there's another reason for why I mark the seams, and I'll show you in a little while when I actually get to texture painting. But here we go. There we go. See, look at that. Nice and clean. Pretty cool, huh? So yeah, just adjust it to the way you want it to look. How that is, it's up to you and how you want your model to be. Okay, so I do have to extend this out a bit, it looks like. So I'm gonna grab this and just take it out a little. Same for this spot. There we go. Just so it's a little bit more rounded. There we go. Nice. Yeah, just adjust it to your heart's content. There we go. And with that, the muzzle is pretty much finished. Let me see now. We can exit out of that. I'm gonna leave the modifier on for right now, just in case I need to make adjustments, and it actually makes it easier to add minuscule adjustments in case I need it. But now we're going to work on the head. Don't freak out. So Shift A, and again we're going to go with the sphere and just hit GZ to lift that up a little bit above the muzzle. Now this is a really cool nifty trick. So tab into edit mode, select faces. Now what people tend to do when they first start is, you know, they think that they're selecting all the faces by hitting B, which creates a box select, and then they do that. But the problem is that it doesn't go completely through. The only way to get it to do that is to hit the X-ray. Click B, select, and you make sure you're right in the center. And hit X, delete faces, and out of X-ray mode. Now watch this. This is probably another favorite of mine. Mirror. So instead of having to waste your time getting both sides even, you can just use the mirror and clip and select clipping, merge. The reason why you want clipping on is because if you try to upload a model without it active, it leaves an ugly line, especially after making certain adjustments. But I'll show. Matter of fact, let me show you that actually. So like, you hit this and see they're separated. They're not merged. But clipping and merge, there we go. See? And right mouse button to get out of that. So basically what you want to do is create the head. So object mode, scale it up, and basically you just want to adjust it. G, Y, get it as close as you possibly can. And see right here, this muzzle, the subdivision is still on. So we can adjust it so that way it's more closer to the head. Just so there's only a little bit of a protrusion. There you go. See? Now back to the head. Now see, when it comes to making VRChat models, the one thing you have to keep in mind is to not let the mouth overlap. So click on a face and then shift select the other ones around it, X faces, and it deletes those faces. But you see it still looks like it's part of the head. Now see, here's a funny thing. When you type head in Blender and then try to import it into Unity, Unity can't read it, which is odd. But if you type in body, it works just fine. So let's continue on. Going into here with face select, check this out. Based off of the reference, it looks like she has a split between her eyes, unlike typical Sonic models. So here's how this is going to work. We're going to go Control R, and here you can actually adjust the line a little bit if you so choose. Just make sure there's something there that acts as a separator for the eyes. But yeah, you want to get the faces. I'm going to show you guys something else. When you're making models and you're working on the eyes, for example, you can click on a face, hold Control on your keyboard. Also, excuse me, my voice is a little scratchy. I haven't spoken this much in a while. But you hold Control, and then depending on how big you want the eyes, you just click the furthest face and boom, it selects the line. And I can do the same thing for the other faces and then just delete them. Now I know this looks janky, don't worry. Here comes the fun part. We're actually gonna start shaping. So, and with the mirror on, it's a heck of a lot easier. So basically, this is how I do it. Select 2 lines and then F. F just means fill on the keyboard. I mean, there are other ways to do it, but I find that this makes cleaner lines. And F. There we go. Another thing you can do, if you don't like the way the face looks, you can just delete it. But yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and shape the face. I'm just using double G to move the vertices back, so it's not affecting the rest of the other edges or vertices. But if you wanted them to, you're more than welcome. Because like, for example, here we go. Because typically Sonic models have a... Here, let me show you. There's a little bit of a face right there. So you want to make sure that there is a spot. But there we go. Just adjust it. There we go. Now see, some of you are probably wondering, why are the eyes so big? And well, it's a Sonic model. Typically they do have big eyes compared to other beings or people. If you really wanted to, you can also add a line there as well, just to just keep shaping a little bit easier. But eh. Let's see here. See, it's looking pretty good already. And double G to move those just a bit, and right there. There we go. Now, another reason for how big they are, and you just use this subdivision modifier for this and make sure that's selected, and it smooths out everything. And the reason I prefer to do that is because of this. So I'm going to go into the X view, or the Z view, I'm sorry, and I just want to shape the head a little bit more better. Turn on the proportional editing and move that out a bit more. Use X here. See? Let's see. And here's another cool thing about the subdivision. When you extrude edges like this, there we go. See, there's a lot of ways the subdivision is useful. Just keep extruding and lower the radius. Okay. See, look at that. I'd say we're off to a pretty good start. Some of you may be thinking, that kind of looks like a bug. But don't worry. The more shaping you do along the way, the better the model is going to look. So, let's see here. There we go. Okay. That should do for now, I believe. Now here's another thing I like to do. Actually, hold on. There we go. But yeah, here's another thing I like to do. While still in edit mode, and this part's really nifty, I'm just gonna unclick these and then Shift A, because we need something for the eyeballs, and I learned the hard way that using another sphere is not a good idea. I prefer to use circles. R, X, 90 degrees. Enter. Now see, check this out. As long as clipping and merge are off, you can actually take the meshes as separate. RX And you just basically want to fit them. So I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna adjust the vertices yet, and these need to be filled. So Control F, grid fill. And we'll make the offset cleaner. There we go. So just so the lines are straight. Alrighty. Now we can turn the clipping and merge back on. And the reason why I do this with the subdivision modifier is because it actually makes shaping them easier to work with. And you don't really have to do much. Here we go. Oh. Just like that. There we go. See, look. And that's basically it. That's all you really needed to do to make eyeballs. And we can take that down, or take it back a bit. There we go. There we go. Much better. Now then, you're probably thinking, well, how do I make the ears? Aren't they connected? And yes, they are. And I'm going to show you how I make ears. This goes for pretty much any Sonic model. So let's take a look here. Trying to look past the floof of the poodle. The ears are triangular and they're pretty long. So how this is gonna work, I'm just gonna go up here. I'm actually gonna make the height of the head bigger. Just not to the point where it's like an alien. Here we go. Because you kind of want to have the bases for the ear shape. Let me get this, go on the side. Okay. Okay. So yeah, it's fairly straightforward. Okay. So now, here's the magic of the subdivision modifier. So basically, you want to delete some faces. So depending on the size of the ears, it's best, you can start off small, but since I'm fairly sure on where I want them to be. Actually, let me make another line here. There we go. Because sometimes when it comes to ears like this, they tend to go on the sides, or the back of the sides of the head, and X faces. Now, edge select, and we're gonna go down here to smooth. Watch this. And then I'm also gonna shrink it. And hit G just to extend the mounts. And there we go. I know it looks weird. I know it looks weird. But just using S, Z, and then R to rotate, and then G. Just so I can get a clearer picture. There we go. Okay. So you can take this opportunity to shape them out however you feel. But there we go. Gonna go here. There we go. Just kind of smooth it out a little bit at a time. Or even take vertices and try to make it round. Okay, so let's go ahead. Oh, let's go ahead and add a line. Just so we can keep it smooth. There we go. We'll add another line here too, just to smooth it out. There we go. But yeah, add lines whenever you feel it's necessary, but don't go overboard. Because with the subdivision modifier, it'll add vertices when it's applied. And fun fact, you cannot apply any of these modifiers while you're in edit mode. But yeah, moving on, just with those edges selected, just hit E to extrude. And then you just go from there. E, extrude, and then scale. E, S to scale. And you can always shape them more down the line. As long as you have mirror and subdivision on, you'll be all good. Let's see, X. Let's see, S, and then Control F, grid fill. This is just to keep the tips of the ears soft. And you see now there's a bit of a dip, so you can just adjust those. It's not a big deal. And G, X, smooth them out. There we go. Another thing you can also do, I don't do this technique very often, but if you want, you can go to select all the vertices, vertex, smooth. See? I think we can actually delete. Yeah. Now, when you delete something, it actually takes away the faces. So, like, for example, let's say I delete the edges and it leaves that horrid gap. No. I mean, sometimes it works, depending on what your look, depending on the look that you want to achieve, but I typically don't do that. What I do is I hit X, dissolve edges, and it takes it away. See? So now you're probably asking yourself, well, what's the point? The point is to get these ears as smooth as possible. Like, if you want to keep the line, that's up to you, but if you see lines like that, it's best to just delete them so you can have a cleaner look. And let's see, here's another thing. Remember when I was talking about the edge select? Here, let me go up here. Now, this part's really cool. I'm going to show you another reason why I mark the seams as I go. So now, you see these lines. Oh, let me clear that one. I don't need that one. But yeah, now you see these red lines, right? Matter of fact, let me get these down a bit more. There we go. So with face selects, and you just click on one face and then L, it only selects the faces that are in that seam. And here's why I do it. Not E. I to inset. And these are also adjustable. So you can move them around if you need to. I typically do it on the Y, like in the front face. And if I want to flatten these out, I can do that. Okay, you can turn on the X-ray mode if you want. Hit E, extrude. And now these ears actually look like ears. You don't have to do it the way I do, but I just find it's easier. Let's just hit shade smooth, see how that looks. Well, that's not bad. But if you feel like that's too much, you can always go back. Just be aware that in Blender you do have a limited amount of times that you can hit Control Z, which I wish that they'd remove, but it is what it is. Oh, I wasn't trying to go back that far. I just wanted to bring this in down somewhat. There we go. And there's that. There. And if you need to, you can just shrink them just so it looks cleaner. Now this is looking more like a cat rather than a dog, but that can be easily changed, especially later, because we're only still on the head. So I'm gonna go ahead and make these sides of the ears just a bit wider. There we go. Okay. And protrude these out just a bit. There we go. And there you go. That's the head done. Or technically body. And yeah, we're gonna go ahead and select both of those. You can hide the empty as well if you wanted to. But basically we're just gonna move the head and muzzle up. I just prefer to select all of them at once just to keep that form. So now we are moving on to the bodice. So Shift A, mesh, cylinder, and instead of 32 we're going to go down to 12. And there's there's a reason where we're going to move that up. So tab into edit mode, put on X-ray, B, and I tend to go over the middle line because the tops and bottoms of the cylinder don't have any vertices, they're just flat. And X, faces. Now I learned about this while I was making while I was learning how to make models for animation, and I found it's useful for making the models themselves. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. So we can go ahead and hide these. And then using edge select, click, shift click, F, control R, and right click mouse button. And select those, and oh, and these, F. So you want to do that for both ends. Okay. Now check this out. So as long as clipping and merging are on, we're going to click A to select all of that. And vertex, smooth vertices. I know it doesn't look like a body yet, but that's the whole point of modeling. It won't look like a body until I make it look like one. So let me see here. So what I typically do is I'll select these bottom lines. And again, using the control click, and it'll pick shortest path. But yeah, I typically just shrink it and adjust it to my liking. And since we're dealing with a female character, she's gonna have those curves, because you want to get it as close to the reference as possible. Control R, scroll wheel to add more lines. Not too many though, I'd say 3. And then edge select, control click, and just hit G twice, and then we can add another line right here. And just kind of extend that out. There we go. Pretty darn snazzy. So now, using the vertex, hit G twice, and then just move that in somewhat. You don't want it fully in, because this is going to be crucial for the movements for like the spine and hips and all that. Select lines. There you go. Since the poodle girl's got curves, we're gonna go ahead and just add those in. There we go. So now here's what's gonna happen. Face select these faces, X, faces, line. And if you don't have loop tools already, it's easy enough to add it. You just go into edit, preferences, and you can search loop tools, and you just click it and it adds it. And as long as autosave preferences is on, it'll save automatically. But for here, loop, right click mouse button, loop tools, circle. And again, you can adjust these to your liking. And just strain them out along the Z axis. I prefer to have my legs a little bit curved because it allows for easier movements when it's in VR chat. So here we go with this. In E, another thing when it comes to extruding, another reason why I use the mirror modifier is because extrude doesn't work, oddly enough. It doesn't work on both sides. So the mirror modifier really comes in handy when you're making models like this. is because you're going to be extruding quite a bit throughout the process. So we're going to go ahead and move that in a bit more. There we go. And we can adjust it. So for here, we're going to go ahead and make the back. Again, it's just a matter of shaping it. So however your reference is, just go ahead and use it. Because again, a reference is a very handy thing to have. Let's see, go ahead and adjust that. There we go. There we go. Okay, looking pretty good so far. So now, the way I typically make my models is like I'll make it full body. So we're gonna go ahead and add edges to this poodle, and we're just gonna move the bottommost ones up using double G. There we go. Now I'm gonna show you guys something. Go into subdivide and select all that. There we go. So basically, go into faces. Now this is typically how I make the feet, but I'm going to show you why I don't really use subdivision until I have the whole body worked out. Unless there's a proper layout, I should say. Gonna just go ahead and keep extruding because these feet typically are pretty big. And SX, add a line there. But yeah, you really want to be careful because with subdivision, it is useful. Don't get me wrong, but it does have limitations. So like you can't, as long as you have a mirror modifier on, you don't want to get them too close because then they'll merge, and you don't want that. You do not want the feet to merge. Because, you know, it would look kind of weird because after the weight painting aspect is done, yeah, it's not pretty. But luckily we're not at the rainbow scene yet, so select these. We're just filling them up. with the edges. There we go. We can take these down a bit, I think. But again, it's just a matter of adjusting. There we go. Now you'll see that some of these have heels. I'm going to show you guys a trick later down the line on how to do those. But for now, we're just making the base. So let's see here. Now, sometimes people, when they're making models, they want to make the arms separate, and that's perfectly fine. You know, you do you. So like, let's get out of edit mode really quick. Shift A, and typically, if I'm making models that have arms that aren't like attached, like take Sonics for example, or Shadows, I use a cylinder, Control R, 90, scale it down, bring it up to where the shoulder would be, and just extend it using the X-axis and just adjusting it. It doesn't look terrible. It works just fine. So if you want to make an arm this way, that's more than okay. But for me personally, when I make VRChat models, I prefer to have the arms attached for a multitude of reasons. One, it allows more fluid movement on the arms, and two, it looks cleaner. So how this works is using the face select. I select these faces up here, hit X, faces. So edge select. You can smooth these out too if you so desire, but basically how I do that is I just use the loop tools to create a circle. So R, gonna go 45-degree angle and shorten them. There we go. And just extend them out somewhat, but not too much. So E, X, you want to start off small too. And you don't want to make the arms too big or too long. And then we'll just alt scale them up. Because typically with Sonic models or Sonic based models or characters, for some reason their wrist areas are bigger, which, you know, it's Sonic, so it's whatever. But go ahead and just adjust the way you want your model to look. And since this girl is low-key kind of thick, she's gonna be. Actually, add a line here. She's gonna be thicker than some other models, which is perfectly fine. Control B, and all that does is that it separates lines. But yeah, totally up to you. See, you can go ahead and just adjust the back of that. This is where the Alt S comes in handy. And this is going to sound a little bit weird, but she does have a bit of a butt. So G, Y. Again, you don't have to if you don't want to, but since I want to make the models as accurate as possible, there's got to be a bit of a but. Actually, we'll select all of those lines. There you go. But yeah, just keep adjusting the model to your liking. Now, since she has a little puffer tail, I'm not gonna worry about sculpting it. So it's all good. But typically the way I do tails, let me extend that out a bit more, actually. But yeah, typically what I do when it comes to making certain tails is that I'll use the face select, and just select certain parts and hit X. But since that's not really needed here, we can leave that alone. Let's go here. GY. Brown that out just a bit. Okay. Okay. It's looking pretty good so far. Ugh. Okay. And let's bring up the muzzle and the quote-unquote body. Just so we can have a little bit of a reference here. So select those and shrink them down. And then bring them down. And since she's got a neck that you can actually see, we're gonna go ahead and make sure there's space for a neck. But here we go. We're gonna go ahead, Control R, move these in a bit. And there we go. See, this is typically how I make. Actually, let's get these moved up. There we go. Right there. Okay. But yeah, typically how I make the neck is by just selecting certain faces. So again, if you need to add extra lines, that's perfectly fine. But delete those faces. And with the subdivision modifier, it actually rounds it out pretty nice. Now, I know I'm making a female, but the basis is the same. It doesn't matter if you're making a male or a female, as long as the base model is... It's the same process, no matter what gender. But yeah, for the neck, edge, select edges. You can use the loop tools to create a circle if you really wanted to. And that looks pretty good. And then with those edges still selected, E, Z, E, Z. There we go. And let's take a look with the body. Okay. That looks good. So now, since most of the only thing we have to make right here is the chest area. Go ahead and add R to that one. Control R. Don't worry, it's not going to be anything graphic. So YouTube, don't sue me. Actually, gonna go ahead and do this. And just, you can adjust it however you want. Whatever works for you. But again, YouTube, don't sue me for this. I'm literally just making a commission model. But yeah. Turn off clipping and merge for a second, because those are... Yeah. Okay, there you go. Now that they're separated. But yeah, obviously if you're making a male model, you don't gotta do this. Just forewarning. Let me see here. Sorry, I mute my mic. Someone came into my room. But yeah, just go ahead and adjust it the way you feel you need to. Since this poodle is pretty, I guess, voluptuous, I would say. Again, it really depends on your reference. Okay, I think we can actually add a line here. This is knife. Basically, it's just K and then enter, and it creates another line. Only do this if you absolutely have to. I typically don't need to, but for this one, it's needed. Just so you don't have to add another line. Because the less vertices there are, the better. Okay. I think that should do it. Let me just clean up the lines here. There we go. And then just shade smooth. There you go. I'm gonna go ahead and do the vertex smooth. There. Not bad, not bad. Need to adjust the buttocks a bit though. So now for the final part of this video, we are going to make the hands. Now don't freak, the hands are not difficult, but they are going to be made from a separate mesh. So Shift A, and instead of a circle or sphere, I'm going to use a cube. So just bring that up. I know you're probably thinking, oh my god, it's too big to be in a hand. I know. But that's the whole point of modeling. Is you're able to shrink things as well as extend them. So you want to match it as close to the wrist area as you possibly can. Actually, let me get this here. So typically what happens is you go into edit mode and then Control R, add 3 lines there, add 3 lines there, bada bing bada boom. And you also want to delete these back faces using Control click X faces, because those are just going to get in the way, and shrink them. There we go. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna go ahead and just, well, actually that can wait. You know, we don't need these yet, actually. Dissolve edges. But yeah, you're gonna create 4 fingers from these vertices, or these faces, right here. So that's why you only need 3 lines. The thumb is gonna come out from the side. So we're gonna go ahead and select these and scale down along this edge. These don't have to be adjusted right away, if you so choose. Right, you know, to each their own. Oops. Gee. But this is just me being me. So what's gonna happen is that we need to make spaces for the fingers, because when you look at a human hand, you'll see that they have those curves in between each of the fingers. So to do that, we're gonna hit Alt V, and then using the Y-axis, you just adjust the in between spaces. Let's see, Control Alt V G Y, or not G Y. Oh my God, hold up. Alt V Y. I don't know why I said G. Okay. And there we have the basis for the fingers. And again, it's fine to use a reference for hands if you're struggling with it. You can find plenty of pictures like that on YouTube, or not YouTube, like Google search, Bing, Yahoo, pretty much anything that has a wait, what is this? What is going on here? Okay, there we go. I just had to fix the gap and adjust that a little bit too. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and adjust the shape of the hands. There you go. Give them more of a rounded look. There. So then this part's pretty easy. We're just gonna simply extrude these. Gonna go bit by bit. Pinky. Gonna go ahead and extrude. And then the middle finger, extrude. Alright, time to add the lines that we're going to need to move these said fingers. Control R. Or if there's lines already, just move them, just adjust them. Okay, and there we go, we got the fingers. I'll make the pinky one just a little bit longer. You can just use G for that. There we go. And move this up. Just somewhat. There we go. So now you're probably wondering, gonna add a line there. Now for the thumb. This part is probably the most difficult part of the hand. However, this is where extruding comes in handy. Rotate that. And then bring these faces down. Then just hit I to inset, and then G to move it out. Okay. Okay. Again, it's okay to use a reference for hands, especially since I know that some people find it kind of daunting. But it does help. Having references do help, so don't be afraid to use them, guys. You can always adjust that. Okay. It looks blocky, but obviously I'm gonna go ahead and put the mirror on. And sometimes the mirror can't automatically read what's there on in the scene. You just select an object that has its own mirror or it's symmetrical, and it'll be good to go. And then subdivide surface. So let's keep working on the thumb a bit. There we go. But yeah, just keep adjusting it to your liking. Just make sure that there's space in between the fingers. So typically what I do is I'll select faces and I'll just, using the y-axis, turn that back on, G, Y, to just extend the fingers out somewhat. But try not to move the middle finger. The middle finger can stay where it is. There you go. Alt scale, just to widen the fingers out a bit. Just a little bit though. But yeah, if you feel like you need to extend the fingers more, that's perfectly fine. Or like, well, not extend, but to move them, just so you have that finger space. There we go. Especially since, let's see, Alt, select, and then Shift. Make sure you're still holding Alt before while you're hitting the select, because then you're able to select more lines. Alt S. But again, we're making a Sonic character. It's an OC, but I still go with the Sonic type look when it comes to having the characters have thicker fingers. Let's adjust this a bit so it's more upward. There we go. And up here, you need to use the shortest path. Oop. Gotta have the Knuckles. And no, I'm not referring to Knuckles the Echidna. That has nothing to do with this. Okay. Get those, and there's that. Not too big. Shortest path. There we go. And just shrink it down just a little bit. And there we go. There's the hand. So now you're probably asking yourself, how am I supposed to attach hands if they're separated from the main mesh? Easy. I will show you in a moment. First, adjust it so that way the hand is as close to the wrist as possible. What that means is just adjust it. Okay, that looks good. Now check this out. Joining. I'm gonna go ahead and smooth that. There we go. And if you need to, go ahead and smooth vertices. You might have to make adjustments, but again, it's up to you guys. Make these a little bit thicker. There we go. Now check this out. Since both I gotta rename this to bodice. Since the bodice and the hand have mirror and subdivision, all I have to do is select the hand, shift click the bodice, then Control J, and the meshes are joined. But that still doesn't really solve the problem, does it? Because there's still this big gap. Well, how do we fix it? Simple. Since the meshes are combined, you just click tab to go into edit mode. Now check this out. With the subdivision modifier, this works miracles. So what you do is, with your vertex selected, you just click one, shift click the other, and then hit M on your keyboard, merge at center. And you just do that all the way around. See, look at that. See, with subdivision on, it's actually easier to merge things. And it makes the product come out clean. I'll show you what I mean after all of these bits have been merged together. And they're relatively the same number of vertices, but if you need to remove, or like here for example, X dissolve vertices, it's going to take some away from the hand, but it's not going to hurt it, because subdivision will just add more vertices after it's been applied. Shift click merge. Here we go. X dissolve vertices and then merge, and there we go. If you need to, you can make adjustments, but I'd say that's looking pretty good. Alright, and again, just make adjustments if you need to. It doesn't have to be perfect, not unless you are a perfectionist. Just saying. Control B. Turn off the clipping and merge for a second, just so I can okay. Again, I'm just adjusting, just adding things to the butt. There we go. So now you see that there's a gap. What do we do with it? It's really simple. So if you see that happening when you unclip and unmerge something, don't freak out. Just let me adjust the bottom here. Okay. There we go. So basically all you gotta do is turn these back on, select the vertex that was taken out, and then just merge. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. Like, you don't even have to make the butt. Again, it's optional. But I try to keep it as close to, actually I can just do this. But yeah, I keep it as close to the reference as I can. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and select circle. So it's not trying to do that. And again, if it yeah, I'd say that's actually fine. Again, if you're not a perfectionist, don't worry about it. Just adjust it to the Just adjust it as best you can. Okay, there we go. All right. I'm gonna pelvis a bit more. There we go. One of the reasons why I have these curved is, one, it'll be easier to make outfits, and two, when I do weight paint the model, it'll make it a heck of a lot easier if there are some slanted lines because of how the body bends IRL. So I'm just trying to get it accurate, you know? Okay, I'm just gonna move these down a little bit. I think they're too long. There we go. There we go, much better. There. All right. So let's see. I think the last thing for right now would be the poodle poof. So let's get the bodice and muzzle back up. I'm gonna adjust the muzzle a bit, actually. Shade smooth that. There we go. Now then, there's another thing I need to add when it comes to the muzzle. Let's see, what kind of nose? Okay, so she's got a cute little heart-shaped nose. So for this, we're just gonna go here. Well, not here. Yeah, actually, we are gonna go here. What am I thinking? So select the line and then Control B. Since I have subdivision on, it's actually gonna make the nose look pretty nice. So you just adjust the shape. You know, if it looks like a heart, make it look like a heart. Okay, so that's about as close as a heart we can get to. So Alt select and mark seam. So that way we can extend it. And if you want to freehand with the select, you're more than welcome to. E. And then there we go. There we go. And there's the nose. We can go ahead and clear these seams. Just leave the base one. Again, you'll see why later. So now to adjust the nose here. Okay. And there we go. Nice little heart-shaped nose. And it's actually kind of cute. I like that. Yeah, now for the floof. I think this one's going to be pretty simple. So Shift A again in object mode, and you'll see what looks like what's called a meta ball. This is what it looks like. Again, excuse me, move this up towards the head, shrink it. But this is what's really cool about the meta ball, guys. For example, tab into edit mode, select all with A, then Shift D. Look, there's floof. So yeah, you could just use this to make the for the poodle. You can use that, but if you're making like hair, it's easier to use. You can just use you can use a UV sphere when it comes to making hair, but for floof like this, just use the meta ball. Because what's cool about it is that you can actually duplicate it and it stays together, making it look poofy. So let's make this, shrink that down, move it up, Shift D. Yeah, you're just doing Shift D pretty much the entire time. Move that, shrink that, move it, Shift D, and move that. But yeah, you can scale it, you can move it, and there we go. Really easy. And since this one's actually kind of covering the eyes, we're just going to do G, Z, and move it down. And we can scale this down a bit, I think, and move it. There we go. Shift D, Y axes. I'm gonna scale it down, because what you want to do is you want to be careful about, well, you don't want to make them too big or too small. Again, it really depends on the model, but for this, there we go. Okay. And convert with right mouse button, convert to mesh. And so you check this out. Add a line there and hit face, Control B. Sometimes you don't even have to do that, but let's get the mirror. G. So let's go ahead and get these moved out of the way. Come on, I'm trying to select the lines here. There we go. And you can just adjust it to however you want. Okay, there we go. Merge and clipping back on, and A, merge by distance, just to make sure that there aren't any extra vertices. So now, click apply. Again, do the same thing, merge by distance, and it removes any extra vertices that are close together. But yeah, and again, you're more than welcome to adjust it to your liking. As long as you have the X factor on. Also, fun fact, it's my first time making a poodle. Looks pretty nice, I'll be honest. But yeah, now there's only a couple more things I'm going to add, and then I'll call it a wrap here. So, irises. Making the irises is really easy. All it is a mesh of a circle. RX 90, and just adjust it to where the eyeballs are. Scale it down, GX, and then edit mode, Control F. Okay, and with that, just adjust the size. Move it back to about half of its clipping, and then R, Z to rotate, and then just take it back out. There you go. And we're also gonna add the mirror, and again, just mirror object in case it doesn't do it automatically. But yeah, that's basically it for the eyes. And the last thing we need, I'll make the claws as a separate thing, just so because those are going to be a toggleable items. So cube, these are going to be for the teeth and tongue. Because obviously, when you're making models, they gotta look like they're talking, right? So this is gonna be for the tongue. Make sure, you know, Control R, and then get the line in the center, and then right click the mouse button to keep the line centered. So X-ray, B for box select, X faces. And there's a reason, and obviously, again, you can see how much I love using the mirror modifier as well as subdivision. As we check this out, we're just gonna add 3 lines for this one. X-ray back on, vertices selected, and we're just gonna adjust the shape so it looks more like a tongue. And here, just rotate it, and G, rotate it. Okay. Pretty much the same thing is gonna apply to the teeth, but that's gonna be a separate mesh. However, it's also gonna be made from a cube, so we're gonna move that up from the side view, shrink it until it's about right there, and then S, Y, and again, tab to edit mode, Control R, then right click mouse button. B for box select, X faces. And mirror. Make sure clipping is on. Actually, did I? Okay, there we go. Now to make the teeth. Super easy. It's just a matter of extruding and moving and rotating. Okay. We're actually going to make these taller. Because when you use subdivision modifier for them, they're going to shrink them a bit. So just move that up. Let's go ahead and get the subdivision known sub. There we go. Then shift D along the Z axes. Just move it down just so there's barely any space. And then move those bottom teeth back along the Y axis. And since both the tongue and the teeth have the same modifiers, we can just click to join. Control J. Just call these teeth and tongue. Okay. And here we'll just go with floofy hair. No, not hairy. Jesus. There we go. Floofy hair. So now, shade smooth. And if you need to adjust the size, that's perfectly fine. But basically, this is going into the mouth. You can have the X-ray on so you can see what you're doing more. And then again, just shrink it. Just make sure there's plenty of space between the lips and the teeth, because the last thing you want to do when you're making expressions is to well, let's just say you don't want the teeth or tongue clipping through the bottom jaw or the upper. There's more space in the upper one than there is down in the bottom. But let's adjust the inner mouth here really quick. Scale. Scale. Okay. I believe. There we go. We're just gonna go into the mouth here and remove the seam. Clear seam. Okay. Alright, and with that, the body is done. Woohoo! Look at that. I mean, there are these other details in the feet and the hands. So if you really wanted to, you could just go into the bodice and make some new meshes to put in there. Or another thing you can do is by selecting faces. Yeah, just select these faces and hit I. And actually, just a little bit. And okay. There we go. There are the little cute little pads. Go ahead and add the heart ones. Why not? Let's see. K for knife. Hit enter. So now we're gonna just make the heart. There we go. Opera GX? I'm joking. Okay. K for the knife. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and adjust the shape on that. There we go. Edge, select, mark seam. And we're gonna bring these in a little bit. Double G, bring those in. Okay. There we go. And we'll mark the seams for the paw pads. Seam and just there we go. All right, so we can do the same thing for the feet. Here we go. I'm gonna add a line here, I think. Yeah, let me look at the reference. Was it 3? Yeah, it was 3. Okay, so for this, I'm just gonna select these, hit I, and inset faces, you can actually choose individual. So there we go. Line selects, mark seam. You can just extrude. Scale. There we go. Not all avatars have this feature, but this OC does. So again, I'm just following the reference that I was given. Go. Okay. For the knife and get a nice clean cut there. Go. Gonna get another cut here. You want, and when you do add lines like this, just try to keep the lines as clean as possible. Okay, so I think along here. I'm just experimenting here. Okay. There we go. I got something that looks like a heart. So again, we're just gonna mark this seam here. And if need be, you can also subdivide, but it doesn't always work. So just bear that in mind. Okay. Oh, I was not trying to. Oh well. Just do this and take off those and mark seam. Okay. And I'm gonna go ahead, hit I. Oh. Okay. Let's see, there we go. Just gonna just shorten that out. There we go. There. Okay. Get those out a bit more. There we go. And then bring this down just a bit. And now we can extrude and just shrink it. There we go. Okay. All right, and with that, I think we're done for today. Whew, that was pretty wild. Let me just add one more thing. Gotta add the pad on the feet. Okay. But other than that, I'd say we're doing pretty darn good for this tutorial. Let's bring this up a bit. There we go. There. Alright, and with that, this video is done. There's a heck of a lot more to go through, but for right now, this will do. This will do. So thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. If you like what I do and want to help support the channel, consider clicking that subscribe button. Hit that like, share it around. And I do accept donations through Streamlabs. Link is in the description below. It's optional. Nobody has to pay. I'm not that type of person. But if you do donate, it'd be greatly appreciated because it really would help out my channel. But for right now, I'd say this is a good place to end off. So again, thank you all. And until next time, we will be rigging. That's going to be fun. But yeah, thank you guys so much. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.